Welcome. I'm Perry. This is Jeremy. We're going to talk to you about this program called LaunchPad, this accelerator, and in particular, a set of interactions we call office hours.
Just to tell you a little bit about ourselves, we're instructors at Stanford University, where we teach not only graduate students the tools of idea generation and incubation, but also professionals in the context of executive education and organization. So our experience spans idea generation, incubation, grad students, and professionals. But the purpose of this video is to tell you a little bit more about the class called LaunchPad, which is a very successful class we've been running at Stanford for the last 11 years, and our specific approach to entrepreneurship, where we don't believe in business planning so much as business building. So you can think of us like Hans and Franz. We're here to pump you up.
So with that, one of the things we wanted to get across here in this video is this need to have a lot of ideas to get a breakthrough innovation. What do we mean by a lot of ideas? Amazing data a friend of ours, Bob Sutton, has put together in research papers. This is the funnel of ideas to prototypes, to incubated offers, to successful outcomes. So to get 2 to 3 successful outcomes, you look at all of this history, you need 4,000 ideas, 226 prototypes, 12 things incubated. How in the world would you possibly do that as quickly and efficiently as you need to launch something?
We advocate an approach that we call launching in order to learn. So rather than planning or researching, actually launching. And specifically, we advocate what we call experiment-driven launch and learn cycles. This is so important, and it's so different from the way many people think about business building, whether they're inside of large organizations or whether they're entrepreneurs. You think back to AT&T's example of the failure of the picture phone. This is a company that put a ton of money in a video conferencing software back in 1964, and yet they failed because they fundamentally didn't learn the kinds of things they needed to learn early enough in the customer journey. But it's not just a historical phenomenon either.
No, we know a company, Westfield, a shopping center company, that faced a challenge with their shopping center here in San Francisco as to what to do with the 4th floor. It wasn't well trafficked. And what they decided was a good idea was to put a beer garden up there. And the first step they did, which many organizations and many entrepreneurs do in their first step, is they surveyed people. They asked people, would you come to a beer garden on our 4th floor? Lo and behold, a high percent, 90% of the people surveyed out of thousands said, yes, I'd come. If it existed, I would come. They went ahead and built out something on the 4th floor, and it was a failure. Nobody came. And the difference in that approach of generating data through surveys versus generating data through experiments is exactly the difference that makes the difference in many times between success and failure, most of the time. In this case, if they had put a small prototype on the 4th floor and asked people to come and buy a glass of beer, they would have learned very quickly, even with a very, very small, simple prototype, that people wouldn't come upstairs. So a good example of this experiment-driven attitude we want in our entrepreneurs in office hours.
It's something that most people fail to think about. How can I design a clever experiment to learn and address a really meaningful risk with very little cost, very little time, and very little investment? If you think about innovation, it sits at the intersection of technological feasibility, business viability, and market desirability. And each of those lenses asks a question about a new to the world innovation. Can we make it? Can we make money making it? And do people want it? And the vast majority of entrepreneurs and organizations focus their energy on this question. Can we actually make it? It's what AT&T did 60 years ago. It's what Westfield did more recently. What we say is, instead of answering that question, let's answer a different question first. Do people want it? Ironically, over 50 years after AT&T failed with their video conferencing service, Intel failed with the same kind of service, but only after spending $750 million on their ProShare service. And I love this quote from Andy Grove, who's one of the greatest CEOs of all time. He said, "We assumed that just because it could be done technically, there would be high demand. It's just that we were wrong." This is the mistake that we're trying to help founders avoid by focusing on a fundamentally different question. Do people want it? And so what we advocate is an approach of putting desirability first in your consideration as a founder of whether you should move forward with a particular direction. The way we do that is a very simple scaffold that Perry will walk you through.
So now getting to what is this LaunchPad office hours interaction like? What it is a very quick conversation that's about 3 post-its of information you bring to us and a 4th post-it we work on together. If you can think about product market fit being defined this way, meaning the core of what you're doing being defined by, do I have a target user with some specificity? Is there a particular pain point or problem in their life I'm seeking to solve? Put those on those first 2 post-its. And then finally, what is the killer feature? What is the key feature? What must my solution deliver to solve that pain point for that target user? That's your hypothesis of product market fit. And then what we do is we work a lot on that last column to craft a 2-hour experiment. Yes, a 2-hour experiment. How do you do something really, really quick, low cost, that has very, very fast payoffs to you as a founder and can generate some data? Does your killer feature solve that pain point for that target user? And how do we craft a quick experiment to generate some data on that early on?
So if you come to office hours, as long as you bring those first 3 post-its, who's our target user, what is the pain they're experiencing, and what is the pain-killing feature that I'm envisioning, we can work with you to help you craft the 4th post-it, which is what's a very simple and scrappy and clever experiment you can run to learn whether your underlying assumptions are true or false. All it takes to show up to office hours is having 3 post-its filled out and a willingness to entertain the consideration of crafting a really clever experiment. After office hours, you may never want to see us again, and you may not want to execute the experiment. That's totally great. Or you may say, what's the worst I can lose? It takes 2 hours of my time, and you'll run the experiment. If you run the experiment, we'll have an incredibly rich and informative and enlightening conversation in the second time you visit us at office hours. And ultimately, what we need to determine whether you're a good fit for the LaunchPad approach is not just to hear a great idea or a pitch, but to see how you as a founder interact with the unknown and uncertainty that accompanies this process, and to see whether you're willing to take an experiment-driven approach to risk reduction. If the answer is yes, you're probably a good fit for the LaunchPad program.
Thank you, and we'll see you with your hypothesis at office hours.